This is a tutorial for continuous domain and range. We're going to focus on continuous domain first. Domain is the x values. I'm going to put that up there. And the x values are on the x-axis, which is the sideways axis going left and right. So that's what we're going to be looking at is this x value numbers going left to right. I'm going to highlight that axis for you. It's this axis right here going left and right. So those are the numbers that we're going to be looking at. Okay, as far as this graph goes, it's got two endpoints. The first one's down low, and the second one's up high. But I need to know where those endpoints are on the x-axis, so I'm going to draw it up. And there's the first endpoint, that's at the -3. Here's the second endpoint, that's at the +4. I'm going to make that look a little neater. That's at the +4. So from left to right, because that's what we care about, it's really in between these two, the -3 and the +4. So I'm going to go over here and write that down on mine, that this is domain, which is x. It's in between the -3 and the +4. These little symbols here mean in between. And since the -3 has a closed-in dot, I'm going to underline that to mean that it includes that number. The +4 does not have a closed-in dot, so it does not include that number, so I'm not going to underline it. Now I'm going to scroll down and look at the second graph. The second graph only has one endpoint, so there's only going to be one number associated with it. And that endpoint, again, I'm going to highlight it, is right here. That's the origin. I'm going to write down below here, the origin is at 0, 0. 0 for the x and 0 for the y. But all we really care about as far as domain is the x numbers. So that's really at the 0. So I'm going to go ahead and write that over here, that my domain is the x and 0 is the number as far as one of the endpoints. Then I'm going to look at where does the graph go after that. So if I'm looking at it, it shoots up, but it's also shooting out to the right. So it's really traveling down the x-axis to the right. I'm going to draw the arrow because it never stops. It keeps going. And since that is what's happening, it's just going farther and farther, never stopping down the right side. The right side is a positive number, so it's getting bigger, it's increasing. So that is the greater than symbol to show that it is increasing. And since it did have a closed-in dot, I'm going to underline it to show that that is a closed-in dot. Now the last one that we look at, I'm going to scroll down here, doesn't have any endpoint, so it's really not going to have any numbers there. What's happening, and I'm going to get my highlighter again, as it's going up, it's not going straight up, it's going up at an angle, so it is going off to the right. So it's really traveling down the right side. I'm going to highlight that of the x-axis. But as it's going down, it's also going to the left, so it's traveling down the left side of the x-axis. I'm going to put my little arrows to indicate that that never stops. It never stops going down and getting bigger and bigger on the right side over here. It never stops going down and getting smaller and smaller on the left side over there. So when it never stops both directions, then we say that the domain is really, and then we're talking about the x again, all real numbers. Here's the symbol for that. I'm going to write it down here. Because it never stops going left and right. And now actually I will talk just slightly about the range, because the range is actually the same thing on this one, because as it's going up, it never stops that arrow, so it's actually traveling up, up, up on the y-axis and down, down, down on the y-axis. And range is the y. Domain is the x, but range is the y, but they happen to be the same in this instance. So for both of these, it's all real numbers because it never stops traveling up and down, left and right.